Hi, everyone. Welcome to the book launch of Smarketing, Sell Smarter, Not Harder by Peter Strohkorb. My name is Iris Chan, and I'm the marketing director for Asia Pacific and Japan at Seismic. We are a sales and marketing enablement platform, and we're really thrilled to be supporting this book launch today. We're all here because we're looking for different ways to achieve greater revenue results in 2021 and beyond. You've come to the right place because the book author Peter Strohkorb is going to be sharing insights with us on how to break down silos within functional teams to really supercharge the revenue engine. Now, before we meet Peter, let me give you a little sneak preview of what we're having in store for you today. You'll be meeting a stellar lineup of panelists. They are senior business leaders from IBM, Insight, Rapiscan Systems, and Six Sensor Intelligence. So it's going to be a power packed session today when we go through the panel discussion. It gets even better. We have some goodies that we're going to be giving away later in the session, so please stay tuned. All of you will also receive a free copy of Peter's book after this event through email. With that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Peter Strohkorb. Peter has extensive experience in both sales and marketing alignment, and he's been through leadership roles at organizations such as 3M, Canon, and most recently at Dell. Peter is recognized as one of the leading experts in sales and marketing alignment globally. With that, I'll now hand over to Peter, who will share with us why he wrote the book and the highlights from his proven methodology. So over to you, Peter.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction, Iris. It's great to be here, and thanks for being the MC for my book launch today. It's really, really good of you to do that. All right. So what I would like to preface this with is why I wrote the book. And I have, 20 years in the corporate sector, plus 10 years where I founded and sold some some SMEs, and also worked in the not-for-profit sector. And no matter where I went, no matter really how small or large the organization, whether they were Japanese owned or American owned or Australian owned, it didn't really matter. This is the scenario that I encountered to varying degrees. And we have, I'm just going to use the mouse here, we have sales talking to the customer, and we have marketing talking to the customer, albeit through different channels. Sales more directly and marketing more through their collateral, their website, their newsletter, etc. But they're not talking to each other enough, and they're not aligning their stories enough. And what happens then at the customer end is that they may hear one side of the story from sales and then a different version of it from marketing. And as the saying goes, a confused mind says no. And the risk is, if the customer gets confused, they might go away to somewhere where they're not being confused, right? So it has real business impact. And also it's a crying shame that marketing creates all this content that sales may not be even aware of or may not be using, or sales says, well, we don't get the right content from marketing, and they might be creating their own, which of course goes against all the rules. So you can see a whole lot of things can go wrong when sales and marketing don't talk to each other. And I've collated here 10 of the symptoms that you may or may not recognize in your own organization. And I encourage you to just have a quick look at each of them in your own time. And you can see that each of them actually has a significant impact on either the customer, the staff, the employees, the organization itself, or the financial outcome of the organization. So it's pretty critical that sales and marketing work together. And it does make sense. I think we all agree that it makes sense that sales and marketing should work together. And there's been plenty of books being written about why they should. But what's been missing from the conversation is the things that I'm answering in this book, called Smarketing, Sell Smarter, Not Harder, is how you go about it. And in the book, I describe an exact methodology, step-by-step instructions in terms of how you go about starting the conversation, getting people bought into the conversation, and making themselves part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. Then we talk about who needs to be involved to make it successful, and what you need to do to make it sustainable, to make it last, because you can't rely on the heroic efforts of a couple of individuals to bring it into the organization, because once they leave, the whole thing will fall over. So the book is there to answer all those questions. Now, why have I become so passionate about the subject? And by the way, I'm not the only one. If you look at the 2017 report by LinkedIn into the wasted productivity costs of sales and marketing misalignment, in the US alone, they put a figure on it of $1 trillion every year. I'll say this again, $1 trillion every year because of misalignment. And that's just in the US alone, and it's, of course, US dollars. Our own research into 185 B2B organizations back in 2014, but still relevant today, showed that organizations with poor sales and marketing collaboration were twice as likely to suffer financially than their aligned counterparts. Not 10%, not 20%, twice as likely to suffer financially because of misalignment. So what do we want instead? So instead of this picture on the left there with the communication barrier, as I put it so politely, is what we want is a virtuous cycle of collaboration. So we want sales still talking to the customer, but then whatever comes back from the customer, whatever feedback you get from the customer, we want sales to pass that on to marketing. Because once marketing understands what the customer likes, what the customer doesn't like, what actually works for sales, what doesn't work for sales, they can actually create more of the useful content and don't need to spend time on less useful content. And they can actually do a better job supporting sales. Equally, the insight that marketing gains from customer research, from market research, from focus groups, whatever, they can then pass it on to sales, and sales can then have a more informed conversation with customers about the market conditions, the market trends, and where is everything headed. And it actually creates a more interesting dialogue for the customer. But the key of the virtuous cycle is that if sales helps marketing and marketing helps sales, everybody wins. Sales will make more sales. Marketing will be recognized for attribution towards revenue, contribution towards revenue, and the customer will get a better buying experience. So it's kind of this win-win-win type scenario that we're all looking for. So there is a bit of nirvana there. And speaking of nirvana, if you look at the business impact of sales and marketing alignment, we can break that down into 4 different dimensions. 1 is financial, 2 is strategic, 3 is operational, and 4 is cultural. And you can look at the bullet points there yourself, and you will see that there's plenty of positive stuff happening once sales and marketing are aligned, on all fronts. Now, and I'd just like to point out this last one, which is actually one of my favorite here, less staff churn, higher job satisfaction, better staff retention. If you create a culture where people are being supported to be successful, you will find that the higher performing people will actually value that and they will stay around. Whereas if you have a culture of blame shifting and finger pointing, then they go, no, I don't like it, and they go somewhere else simply because they can. So there's a lot to be said of the alignment having a lasting and significant impact on the organization itself. Now, Altify in 2017 created a business performance benchmark study, and you can see the URL on the bottom here. Just take a screenshot if you want to look at the full report. But you can see that there's some quite significant quantified benefits, not just intangible benefits like staff satisfaction and so on, but quantified dollar and time benefits that all contribute to productivity if only sales and marketing are on the same page and work together towards a common outcome. Right? And you can see that 4 times higher sales productivity, a quarter higher win rates, nearly 20% shorter sales cycle. I mean, who wouldn't want all that? So there's real gold and then there are hills. And I'll just talk to you about a couple of case studies in Australia. So this at the time was a 2-year-old startup company in the energy advisory sector. And Brent Clark, the CEO, gave me this little testimonial here. And he said that not only did they improve their margins, that they went to a higher customer segment that spent more money, but they've recorded in just 2 weeks the same revenue as they had previously done in 6 months. So instead of taking 6 months to make an amount of money, they made the same amount of money within just 2 weeks. Admittedly, they came off a low base, but you can see that there is a huge difference in the before and after in terms of this organization. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. We have a $500 million national energy provider here. And after working with me for 6 months on this, they had their best sales month ever in the whole history of the organization. Their staff was better engaged. They had more happy and importantly, more loyal customer. And the head of sales and marketing, here's Amy, that I was working with, she is now running the whole place. She is now the CEO. So happiness all around in that organization. Okay, that's enough for me. Iris, over to you.
I'm just going to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Peter. That really resonated with me because when I first read your book, it was like really talking about the story of my life. There were so many key observations and the symptoms that you were describing happening between different teams that really talk to what I was seeing in the environments that I was working with. And so I personally I thought the book was providing me such valuable advice, and I would really like to encourage everyone to grab hold of the book and read it. But now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into our panel discussion, and later on we're going to open up the floor to the audience for some live Q&A with our panel. We have some really distinguished guests on our panel discussion today. First of all, I'm going to introduce Sonya Walker. Sonya is the Executive Partner for Cloud Strategic Growth and Sales Leader of Global Business Services at IBM, Australia and New Zealand. Sonya is an accomplished and well-recognized female business leader in tech, having led sales and business growth at leading tech companies such as SAP, Oracle, and Infor. We also have Mike Morgan. So Mike is the Senior VP and Managing Director for APAC at Insight, a Fortune 500 ranked global provider of technology solutions and services. Mike is an IT industry veteran, and he leads the organization's $600 million business and over 450 plus employees across the 12 offices in the region. We also have Rob Harvey, who's the VP of Sales APAC at Rapiscan. And Rob has over 30 years of experience in business management roles in the industrial automation and engineering space. Last but not least, let's also welcome David Duncan, who's the Senior VP of APAC at Six Sensor Intelligence. David is another business leader who has amassed a wealth of knowledge through more than 4 decades of sales and business leadership in tech and automation. So please put your hands together to welcome our 4 panelists to the virtual stage. And just a reminder to all of you, please enter your questions into the chat and we'll get to them during the Q&A. So I have a question for all of our panelists. Could each of you share with us, based on your experience over, all the various roles you've had in various organizations, some stories, anecdotes, and examples of where you saw go-to-market teams needing more alignment to drive desired results and outcomes, and how some of the concepts from Peter's book have helped, or on hindsight, could have been applied to those scenarios you were seeing. So let's start off with you, Mike, and Sonya, you're going to be up next. So let's hear from you, Mike.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you, Iris. I guess the first comment I would make, I've known Peter for many, many years and was a fan of his first book, The OneTEAM Method. And I think looking back and now having read this latest book, the difference between the two is pretty marked for me. The first was really about setting the scene around some very compelling theory and some very compelling ideas that were very obvious once you get your head around those ideas, but actually quite difficult to implement. They're not complicated, but they're not easy. And I think what the new book does is actually brings the how to in addition to that. So I guess my lessons learned when I look back over my career and where I've seen in every organization I've led or worked for, sales and marketing alignment, even alignment in itself is not really enough. It needs to be sales and marketing on the same page, collaborating as a single unit, is an Nirvana state that I would be lying if I said I'd ever seen fully realized. So it's a constant work in progress. I think my current organization, Insight, is the closest that I've seen because it's the first organization I've seen where we sit down and plan together as a single team, sales and marketing, we have common objectives, and the marketing team would see their success as being sales growth and sales outcomes, which sounds, again, simplistic, but in and of itself has been a very powerful way of transforming and actually making our marketing team feel very connected to the ultimate outcome, which is not number of hits on the web page, but is actually an increase in revenue and an increase in depth in relationships with our customers.
Great, thank you. Sonya, would you like to also share some of your views?
Yeah, thanks, Iris. I guess one of the areas I've been strongly working in over the last 5 years is business and digital transformation. And it's the alignment of the role of Chief Marketing Officer with what we now have in some of the big US companies calling Chief Revenue Officer, and how we get those to align, because quite often in this region, I'll say Asia Pacific, Japan, we inherently get our marketing collateral from offshore, and then either we have the luxury of a local marketing team to localize it, and or it's sort of a show up and throw up scenario, and it just doesn't work. And consistently seeing reference stories that aren't even in country or in region, and a lot of clients don't find that palatable, and it's not relatable. So that started my journey around Smarketing, and originally I was trying to get my marketing teams to do smart marketing. And when I then met Peter, it was an epiphany, because wow, he really gets it. And so since then, it's been a pleasure working with him. I think it's a critical piece in business and digital transformation. And Peter touches on that in his book when he focuses on, the magical, the trilogy, the three, which is the people part, the process, and then the technology. And so often I've seen large digital transformations be approved by boards based on a CapEx cost of the technical piece, and they miss the process and the people piece. So I'm really pleased to recommend this, because I think it's a game changer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sonya. And we have also, a couple of other panelists here. We want to hear from David. David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Iris. And I would almost echo Mike's comments as well, because I think it's alignment is an easy word to say, but it's not actually easy to do. And I would challenge everyone on the call and on the book launch to actually challenge their teams about their level of alignment and collaboration, because you will get the answer, yeah, we're aligned, no problem. However, reality is something different, and it doesn't take too long, and particularly with Peter and the book and the virtuous cycle, it happens very clearly, not only in European and type organizations, American-based organizations, but in Asia Pacific, we also have the added complexity of levels of cultural differences. And I think this is really important to understand, that the level of individual status plays a big part in alignment and the ultimate collaboration. So with the virtuous cycle, we, from personal experience, and particularly with Peter's book, and also with Peter did some work with us as well, to have the alignment not only from the people who are doing the marketing and the work, but also the executives who are on the executive team align, because I think this is where it starts. And to feed that through the organization, alignment is easy to say, but as I mentioned, it's very hard to do. And I would ask some very serious questions about the team and how they are collaborating, and responsibilities and accountability. And I really like the alignment, Mike, of marketing and sales on the result. That's absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your views, David. And over to you, Rob. Love to hear what your perspectives are and whether you've seen, instances where some of these alignment challenges have been overcome, potentially, using those ideas in Peter's book, or you feel like, those ideas in Peter's book would have been super relevant in solving those challenges you've seen before.
Well, thank you very much. And I've got to say, Peter, thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this exciting launch. And I hope you sell 1 million copies.
Me too, Rob.
David and I have worked in similar or associated fields for many, many years. And I echo a number of the comments David makes. I'm in my journey now, I've been with an American company for the last 2 years, following that 7 years with a Dutch company, prior to that a New Zealand company, and 16 years of my own. And I've been a staunch salesperson, sales leads, where the journeyman and things like that. And my opinion over many years was of marketing. They did the brochures and put a new catalog out and did the website. And it was just, very much focused. And it wasn't until Peter rang me and we started contacting over the phone. And I've since moved to Singapore, and I thought, gee, there's something about this guy, the way he was talking, and he was also quite persistent. So he sent me the book, and I thought, oh, okay, yeah, and I actually read it. And for the first time in probably 30 years of my sales journey, reading it and some of the figures, and I actually went on the websites and had a look, I could see, and I think both Sonya and David mentioned the alignment. So in the company I'm with at the moment, Rapiscan, we're a leading technology company in security screening and X-rays and doing a lot of work in cargo. And we have this wonderful brand name, and we have 2 divisions, and both have separate marketing teams, but it's a simple, and then our marketing team, I see stuff comes on LinkedIn and I've gone, gee, it would have been good if we'd known about it. So there's talk about a disconnect within the same company and often within the same office. So when Peter and I got a little bit more serious about 8 months ago, and we're now starting that journey where the very basic thing where marketing and sales actually comes to one person. So we start at the top, because it's no use us, in our roles in sales or things like that, trying to run this. It's got to come from a common source, and it has to have buy-in from all the people, all the stakeholders. So that's where we're starting, and I'm pleased to say we've got that buy-in, and we're starting our journey now, and we will be following this to a T. So I look forward to book number 3. So we can have a bit in how our journey's gone.
Oh, I've actually got
no pressure there, Peter.
No, thank you, Rob, for mentioning it. But I've actually got an idea for book number 3, and it's reasonably advanced, although it's not actually written down yet. It's still all up, just up here, but I've got one ready for you. But seeing that you'd be working with my methodology, I hope that there'll be some dollars exchanging hands as well. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Great.
And don't blame me for being persistent. That's what you meant to do.
Oh, man up my own heart.
That's great. Thank you so much again to Rob and the panelists for sharing your insights. We're now going to take some questions from the audience. We've got a couple of questions that have already come in. So the first one is around alignment between sales and marketing being super important. We all realize that. The question is, how do you see alignment going past those 2 functions and into the wider parts of the organization? For example, with the product teams. So would any one of the panelists like to comment, and including Peter, to comment about extending the idea of alignment into all the rest of the other functions that would, support the go-to-market model?
Yeah, look, I might have a first go at that. And thanks for asking the question. It's a great one. And it's one that comes up quite frequently as well. And I've never quite, maybe it's just me, but I've never quite understood why product management is seen as something separate from marketing. Because they should be just as much aligned as well, and you might want to include also customer success in this context, because sales and marketing can make all the promises up front. If the delivery team doesn't deliver what was promised, then there'll be disappointment at the end of the customer. So you could easily roll it out further. The book in particular deals with sales and marketing, but in the context of marketing, I would include product marketing as well, and product management as well.
Yeah, Peter, I will also take it. And the question from Jennifer is a great one. And in actual fact, we actually include very much working with the teams in Singapore at the moment. And we actually include the sales organization, the market organization, and the product teams linked as one. And we actually sit down a bit like Mike was mentioning. It's actually imperative that you do that. Otherwise it's completely, you have a complete disconnect, and everyone goes on down their own path. One of the things that is important is that a lot of the teams will sprout that they cooperate with each other, and that's okay, and that generally means that they're maybe giving information that is requested by one another or whatever, but to actually get clear collaboration, working together, accountability, actions and activities, and the accountabilities for those action and activities to achieve those objectives and clear targets and goals is exactly what starts to bring this thing together. And I think that's really important, that if you move from the cooperative mindset into a collaborative mindset, but really use, I also think collaboration is another big buzzword that gets used a lot. But if you can nail collaboration in the right words, with right way, with clear accountability for the shared goals and targets, then I think you're on a good way.
Yeah, I might just add that David, that it's important that the collaboration doesn't just happen at CMO, CRO level.
Absolutely.
It needs to trickle down.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would just add to what David said there, Peter. One thing I was reflecting on recently is, I think I'm in the technology space, technology products and services, and it wasn't so long ago in the technology space that marketing's job was to reach into the smart product groups, find out what they had, and then add the sex and sizzle, and make sure someone out there, hopefully many people out there, went off and bought it. So the job was inside out. Today, ultimately, everything that we do in technology today is a service to the customer. And the people who bring the market intelligence are not the smart salespeople who have all the face time anymore. It's actually marketing who are creating demand, inserting themselves and changing the narrative and the buyer journey with the customer, and then ultimately bringing that market intelligence in so that our smart salespeople and product engineering people can configure themselves to what the market is telling us. And the vehicle for telling us that is marketing. And that's a complete 180.
Well, in fact, I'd completely applaud that, because what you don't want is for the salespeople to talk about the widgets and the features and the price and stuff, while the marketers talk about industry trends and all the interesting stuff that the customer's interested in, right? So really, everybody should be on the same page and be able to communicate with the customer at their level.
Great. Thank you for those insights. And we have another question here from Alan, and he would like to get some feedback on collaboration and creativity within and across the marketing and sales teams. I think we talked quite a bit about the collaboration piece. I'd like to hear a little bit about the commentary around creativity. So how can the two teams work together to actually inject creativity into the process and to really engage the clients in a way that is going to help the organization stand out? We're in a very crowded environment today, right? Everything's gone digital, and there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of noise. So what is that element that can help to get a cut through effect here? So any comments from the panelists?
All right, I'll go first again. So it's clearly proven that if you bring people from different backgrounds into one room and force them to come up with a solution to something, that works much better than if you have a whole bunch of people with groupthink, right? So I would welcome that you bring multiple parts of the organization together to just workshop in a safe environment, where nobody gets talked down, to come up with a new idea and a new solution. So I think creativity can happen between sales and marketing and within sales and marketing, and particularly if you do not ignore the customer as well, because you can do all sorts of things with customers in terms of focus groups and surveys and that sort of thing that you can reach out. And I actually, just a small plug, I actually offer a voice of the customer program whereby I go into your customer as Switzerland and ask them what they think of you, and they usually tell me more than they tell you directly. So you can do all sorts of innovative things to get creativity happening. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. And there's another question here from Andy. Peter and the panel, what is your view on the use of incentives such as commission? Are these in fact counterproductive to the quality and integrity of leads as they drive a, qualify in, qualify out sort of, action going on there? So any thoughts on that?
It's a great question, really great question that I'm sure most of us have struggled with over many, many years. I think one of the key points is ensure that you incentivize the right behavior. I mean, you can use incentives to change behavior in some ways. But the problem that we have in traditionally doing that is to set the wrong KPI. And for example, the number Mike mentioned about the number of leads and etc. along those lines. So salespeople, marketing people are quite creative people, and they always find a way to ensure that they maximize their incentive, whether the quality of the actual outcome only really benefits their own pocket. On the creativity thing as well, I think I just want to add something as well, because Mike mentioned about inside out. I think more and more, and we are undertaking now a very strong process that we're calling outside in, and really having a very strong link and conversations with customers, and inviting them to be almost partnering with us in creativity of what they want. And I think this is something that aligns. So if you incentivize a change of behavior, I think that it can work, but you need to ensure that you set the right KPIs for the desired behavior that you want to change.
Yes, that is very true. And I think, one thing to also think about is that the incentivization needs to be consistent across the functions. So you can't incentivize just one functional team and then not have, also motivational factors to reward other teams. So I think it's important to look at both sales and marketing and recognizing, the right behaviors, and that would help to strike the balance between the two, because oftentimes I think marketing gets forgotten and a lot of the incentives end up going to just sales teams, for example. So I think there needs to be a balance to find ways to reward both teams for achieving the shared goals, the shared results, and so on.
Iris, can I just add to that as well? I think it's a hobby horse of mine, because the KPI incentives is it's a cottage industry in my business at times. And I think the purpose of and the place for KPIs and incentives is to accelerate and support an objective. They're not an objective in and of themselves, and they very quickly can become the objective. And it's a lazy management technique to say, well, if we just add another spiff and add another qualifier to an incentive, we'll press the play button, and I'm sure we'll get a great result in 12 months' time. Will drive the behavior. Yeah. But I'm firmly of the belief that the behavior we get in the alignment of our teams is through the conversations that we have at leadership level with them, because they're the things that by the fact we're putting attention on, they're the things that we actually do genuinely think are important. And then the KPIs need to be aligned to those conversations, not the other way around.
And I think just in summary, I'd like to point out that it doesn't always need to be a financial incentive. There's lots of people who would value a bit of kudos, some time off with their family, all sorts of other things that we can come up with. So it doesn't always need to be financial, because rewarding, for example, getting a higher net promoter score with dollars just has the opposite effect of the intention, because it then drives the customer mad with all these surveys that they're being bombarded with, for example. So sorry, Sonya, I just meant to put that in quickly.
No, I'm agreeing with you, Peter. I was actually going to refer to 2 points you raised in the book, because there's the tangible, which tends to focus on the dollars, and then there's the intangible, which is the behavioural and the cultural. And you do actually have in some of the later chapters around the frequency of meetings.
Yep.
And I think those are other things that can be brought into more of a balanced scorecard, not just a simplistic KPI necessarily. And then the quality of those meetings, and actually you go into it further. You talk about how marketing teams can be at events as well and be actively engaged. And I love collaboration, but I used to look at this way that the teams sometimes compromise, and I've tried to elevate the conversation to harmonise, because sometimes too, when there's a compromise in the KPIs or a compromise in the teams, they're giving something away, and it's a win-win is the American term, but one of them's got a capital W and one of them's got a small w. So, I often look at when you want to directionalise or incentivise that behaviour, look at the tangible and the intangible. And I noticed Bruce Chadburn's on the call, and Bruce and I worked together at Infor. He was the global #1 salesperson in Infor when we worked together. And we tackled this in a transformation perspective, trying to make those cultural changes, and they're really not easy. I sometimes jokingly refer to it as culture with a K. But your book does talk about, the meetings and some of those things I think you might want to talk to now, that using your methodology gives people a framework for success. And I really like that.
That was really the idea of the book. And I'll be talking about the methodology after the panel session in more detail, because I actually have a little giveaway later as well.
Perfect.
But it's absolutely right that if you just put the teams together and don't separate them physically, geographically, or otherwise, the collaboration happens more naturally.
Oh, and thank you. I noticed Vanessa says in neuroscience we're now using the language of gain, and I do like that. Win-win has more of a sports American orientation, and there's a couple of authors that derive that term. And yes, I 100% agree with that gain. That's very nice. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you. We have another question. It's for Sonya actually, but I think the rest of the panel you can absolutely comment on it as well. I'm sure you've seen similar environments. So the question is around we've talked about alignment of people and processes across the sales and marketing functions internally, but what about addressing the alignment across the channel partner and indirect sales community externally? And if you think about it, they are effectively an extension of the sales and the revenue engine. So how do we actually look at alignment with the channel partner population in order to effectively engage clients in a digital first world today?
Well, this is actually something that Peter Giel and I have been talking about, and so maybe Peter, you can just summarize our conversation on that. Yeah, you can't talk. Okay. He said he was in a public place, so he's probably in a library or a church or something, isn't he?
Sure.
No, he's on the beach, isn't he?
Sonya, do you have any views on that? Yeah.
Yes, and it's a really important question that sometimes people underestimate. When I worked at RSA Security, 80% of the core revenue went through channel partners or ISV, for example, and it will vary from organisation to organisation. And the first question, being pragmatic, I look at is what's that percentage that you expect out of the channel? And typically, and I have been a channel partner, so I think many years ago I was actually an Oracle channel partner as well. And it's a different value proposition for ISVs and channel partners. And I think as technology vendors or any vendor, you need to actually respect and understand that. Their revenue is your revenue, but that's critical to them, because what might be a small deal to you is actually the deal that's going to make that company's success for a year. And I think there's a lot more to be delved into in the ISV and the channel partners. My personal view is similar to my APJ view, which is you do tailor the content for them. You actually understand, are they existing in your channel pipeline because they're going after a demographic that you're not going after? And quite often they have deep dive industry or subject matter expertise. So they might be in the Defence Department, or they might specialise in public sector or banking and finance. And I think the duty of care and the absolute responsibility comes back to the vendor to actually have those tailored marketing programs. And what I have seen done successfully, and it aligns with the previous conversation around customers, which a number of companies are now setting up what were they calling customer success divisions. And there's two versions of that flavour. One is it's actually renewals in an old world on-prem view, and it's just been rebadged. What I think is the authentic view, which lines up with Smarketing as well, is actually having a customer advisory panel, which could contribute to the Smarketing team. And that seems to work well. And I would encourage even a localised, so it could be if you're running an APJ organisation, you've got a customer team, a customer panel or advisory panel, those ones that you want to partner with to drive value. So maybe they want product enhancements, but getting that direct input to the marketing team, I think that's a game changer. And I think that's the difference, is actually agreeing with all the commentary instead of being inside looking out. Those organisations that I see doing business transformation well, the customer is at the centre of the view. And I've seen some lovely and in fact implemented where we had the customer, and 360 we mapped our organisation around the customer. And that to me is the core and part of that business transformation view of the world. I think it's
fantastic.
I think that's the game changer. And that's when we start to see business transformation impacting the customer in a way that then reflects on increased productivity, revenue, and you start to see those really important metrics and financial gains coming through for customers. I also think it's where the new revenue streams exist.
Yes.
Iris, I think in the setup of the question you mentioned how partners and channels sit within the sales organisation. In my business, they sit within the marketing organisation. And that's a very deliberate strategy for us, because we believe that when you build those relationships and they're truly strategic, they actually become part of a more complex solution that's more customer oriented. When they're part of the sales organisation, they're simply another channel for a selfish prosecution of a deal. And it's a small nuance, but a pretty significant one. And it sends a strong message philosophically that we don't see the partners as only relevant to the last deal. We see them as relevant to what we're trying to be in the market and trying to help our customers achieve beyond the given deal. Once it's in the hands of the salesperson, don't get me wrong, we want to prosecute that deal and we do it together. But the ownership and the ongoing planning and the review and how we execute and the QBRs all sit within our strategic marketing and partnerships business unit.
That is fantastic. And I think that's a really groundbreaking way of, looking at the alignment, because it's no longer just a sales-led conversation. We're looking at it across the go-to-market machinery, and looking at, making sure marketing is very heavily involved every step of the way. And, similarly, we're having, that kind of ethos and approach as well within our organization. We're putting marketing left, right, and center in our alliance discussions and our partnership discussions, because we do realize how critical it is for them being involved right from day one, and being, part of working together with a partner to reach, the customers that we're talking about. So that's great insight. We're going to change tack a little bit now, just in the interest of time. So we will talk a little bit about how, we have technology being part of this equation. We spoke about people and processes, and it's great to see how technology can actually help to not just enable the alignment to take place, but also to really reinforce and maintain it on an ongoing basis. So Peter, if that's all right with you, I would like to, go ahead and share a couple of examples of, how technology can actually play a key role in the alignment process and, approach. So if we go to the next slide, next couple of slides, actually, let me share a couple of alignment challenges that we often hear about. We hear sales say, I can't find the right content for my client. And marketing is saying that sales is not using the content produced by marketing. In fact, Forrester actually found that more than 65% of the content produced by marketing is never used by sales. So how do we overcome these sorts of, alignment challenges? One of the ways you can look at, solving this problem is using, technology. So take, for example, let's move to the next slide. If you look at having a centralized content hub, which provides a one-stop shop to help the sales reps easily find and access content, news, training, and sales plays in a single location, you can actually help to increase sales productivity. But at the same time, it provides those capabilities for marketing to manage the content life cycles, to make sure that only the latest and greatest material is made available. So you don't have this problem of, a lack of consistency with the buyer experience. I think that's a really great approach of using technology to drive closer alignment between the two teams, having this centralized content hub and portal for everyone to come together. So if we go on to the next slide, you'll see some examples of customers who've taken that approach. And the other thing to think about is guided selling, right? Imagine if you have a scenario where you've got, a predictive engine which recommends and prioritizes the most relevant, the most proven content aligned to each stage of the opportunity in the CRM. That can actually help to optimize not just the buyer experience, but also enable the seller to make sure they're sharing the right content at the right time to make it most relevant for the buyer. And so as a result of that, you're able to improve deal progression and you're able to replicate those winning sales behaviors. So if we move on to the next slide, you'll see some customers here who have actually taken that approach of centralizing content in a single hub and also looking at the predictive engine providing, the right content at the right time. GE Power, they have actually seen a $32.3 million pipeline influence by putting in this sort of technology, and they saw this influence in just 2 quarters. Electa, which is a life sciences organization, they actually solved their content usage problem by putting in place this content hub, and now they're seeing a 350% increase in the usage of marketing content. So with that, I think that's a very compelling example of how you can really utilize technology to change the alignment challenges. Another example here is I have no visibility to how my prospects and customers are engaging with the content I'm sharing. That's coming from the sales rep. And then the marketing person is going like, well, I don't have any visibility of how marketing content is actually impacting revenue outcomes. So how do we solve that visibility issue? One of the things we can do, if you take a look at the next slide, is using engagement analytics. So by having page-by-page engagement analytics and real-time alerts of content shared by sellers, you can actually see how the buyers or the prospects are engaging with the content shared. And this helps the seller to decide what's the next best action, when's the best time to follow up, and to tailor those conversations for relevance. So this can be really powerful in moving deals forward and accelerating deal cycles. And if you take those insights at at aggregate level, that's where the magic happens, because you can then really optimize the content. So Blackbot, for example, they actually accelerated their deal cycles by 8% using these sorts of content analytics. And Revelian, which is an HR technology startup in Australia, they had 90% of their sellers finding these sorts of content analytics really useful in moving customer discussions forward to the next level. So hopefully that gives you guys some ideas around what can be done to really look at aligning the two teams together. So in the interest of time, we're going to move right on to look at some special offers we have in store for you today. So over to Peter. He's going to share with us a little giveaway that he has planned for us.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Iris. I appreciate that. One thing I want to say about the reason that Iris is here and Seismic are here is that we have a wonderful symbiosis almost, in the sense that that my methodology helps bring Smarketing into an organization, but the Seismic technology makes it stick. And you're less reliant on the heroic efforts of some individuals who, when they leave, the whole thing falls over. You actually have an ongoing dashboard, metrics, and reinforcement of processes that Seismic provides. So it's not just that I wanted Iris to support this book launch, but I really believe that what Seismic is doing is complements the OneTEAM method and Smarketing as a whole. So thank you, Iris, for that.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to point out that my methodology actually describes three different states, three different levels of maturity in terms of your Smarketing. And there's the silo mindset, of course, where they just operate in separate silos and don't talk to each other. There's the process mindset, where they are linked through some common processes, usually through the CRM or some collaboration tool like Yammer or whatever. But there's really no collaboration incentive for the people. It's more geared through technology and processes. And then, of course, there's the nirvana of the collaboration mindset, where it's more almost like a yin and yang relationship between sales and marketing, and looking at them from the outside, you can't really distinguish them, even though inside the circle, you still have unique and different roles to fulfill. So I promised I was going to mention Neil Rackham again. Here's exactly what he said about my method. And I'm pretty chuffed that a 40, 50-year veteran of the industry is saying this about my methodology. The sad thing is that the younger people don't know who he is anymore because he's been around for so long. But I'm a big fan of his and his methods, and I'm really chuffed that he said this about my method. So on to what Iris was talking about, and that is there are 5 steps to achieving Smarketing Nirvana. And the key to it all, and the thing that makes it actually successful, is not that some guru comes in from the outside and tells you how to run your business, because as we all know, that's not going to be very practical, and there's too many big egos around to actually accept that approach. So the key to it all is self-discovery, meaning that in your organization, the people, the individuals involved, discover that there is a better way than the status quo. But there's no better way to do that than to get to ask them their own opinions, right? And that's what we do in step 1, which is called Pulse of the Business, where we ask them a number of questions, and this is going to the individuals. So it can go from the CRO and the CMO right down to the lowest lead generating person, you know, and we ask them the same questions, and then we look at their responses. And armed with those responses, we can then go to the second step, which is actual one-on-one interviews with the individuals, where they, again, coming into Switzerland, they tell us more than they will tell your boss or their boss or their superior. And we can actually anonymize those responses as well, and then bring them to you in step 3. And that information, that internal information, is real gold for the organization, because you will find that the person at the bottom of the ladder will say something different to the person at the top of the ladder. The person at the coalface will often be faced with the immediacy of the consequences of the misalignment, yet they probably have good ideas in order how to improve their lot in life, but they don't feel empowered to speak out. So you can bubble all that information up and bring it to a forum whereby you create your action plan, and then of course you deliver the plan. So there's 5 steps there to deliver Smarketing into the organization, but it all starts with getting an internal dialogue started. So I want to share with you a real live example of a customer where we did step 1. So again, step 1 is the pulse of our business down the bottom in green. And in this particular example, we looked at score out of 100 in terms of 100 being perfect alignment. What did the individual sales and marketing people say, and how big was their spread, right? In this case, we had a marketing person giving the collaboration a score of 78 out of 100, and the salesperson giving the score of 80 out of 100. Yet the low score was much further apart. So there was 65 for marketing. And by the way, marketing always says that they're collaborating well with sales, better than sales says that they're collaborating with marketing. But sales were giving them at best a score of 20 out of 100, right? So if you, and then if you look at the averages, they're worlds apart as well. So the interpretation of that for us was that there are a couple of individuals on the sales and on the marketing side that have actually found a way to work together, and they're getting from each other what they need, but it's not systemic. It's not throughout the organization. It's just the exception to the rule. So there's a bit of work to be done in this organization to actually make them more aligned, or to help them come together and be more aligned. And in terms of the overall scheme, we put them in the middle of the maturity curve, namely in the process mindset, right? But we also asked them, what are your top 5 priorities in terms of the things that you're not doing right now that you should be doing? And here on the screen, again, read it in your own time, are the top 5 responses from marketing and sales. And again, it's interesting to note that they're not saying the same thing, and they're not giving the things the same priority as each other. So you could then start an internal dialogue and say, why do you say this? And why don't you say that? What makes you say that, and why is that so? And importantly, what would happen to you if we started doing that? So again, it helps create an internal dialogue away from whose fault it is to how can we improve and how can we do better? And again, importantly, how can we make the individuals part of the solution so that when we roll it out, there won't be any passive or active resistance to the solution, to the change. Yeah. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. So the announcement is that I'm going to be giving away 5 of those Pulse of the Business benchmarking exercises, and they're worth $1,987 each. So I'm going to make 5 of those available to anybody on the call here, free of charge. But there's a caveat. You've got to contact me to apply, because I'm going to be judicious in terms of whom I'm going to give this away to, because I wanted to give it away to people that can actually have a great impact through this. And I want to make sure that the organization is ready to actually accept this change. So I'm actually going to be judicious to help you get a better result, rather than just being greedy and saying, no, I'll pick the best ones. So it's actually in your interest that we have a chat about this before you put your hand up, or put your hand up and then we have a chat, either way, all right? And the way that you can contact me is numerous ways, and you've got my email address there, you've got my website, contact me through LinkedIn. I'm easily found. As I said to somebody else, my name is not John Smith. If you just Google me, you find all sorts of ways to contact me. So Iris, with that, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. I hope the discussion we've had with the panelists, with Peter, and all the questions that we've talked about today has given you some ideas of how to apply Peter's methodology and thought process into your day-to-day operations and what you're looking to achieve in 2021 and beyond. And I certainly believe that technology becomes an enabler for refining these processes and helping to sustain these processes, as Peter was mentioning. Once you've got the right approach and you've put in place the right processes, it's great to be able to utilize tools to help you make sure they are sustained, make sure they're enforced, and make sure it keeps going. So hopefully everyone has had great takeaways, and please feel free to add me and Peter to your LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. And thank you to all our panelists for your great insights, and we hope to hear from you very soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And you'll have the free book as well. You'll be receiving that over email from Peter.
And I was just going to say that we have recorded this session. So if you have a friend or a colleague or contact of yours who should also be aware that we've had this discussion, because we had some fantastic panelists, and thank you everybody here for making yourselves available. So we have recorded the session. So if you want to recommend it to somebody to look at the replay, at least we'll make that available to you as well. All right.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you again, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well done. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Great
Thank
session.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.